Willkommen and bienvenue. Welcome one and all to another live stream. I'm very pleased to have in the studio Mr. Hamish McLay of Search and Convey. And today, you may have recognized him from a previous occasion. We've got the inimitable, incomparable Michelle Poller, who's a founding part of the Property Search Northeast. Now, you think that these two people, one's from up north, the other one's not from up north, why are they talking to each other? Well, it turns out they're both connected by IPSA. And IPSA is an association of conveyancers, or rather, I'm not conveyancers, I apologize, search specialists within the conveyancing field. Hamish recently became chairman, and Michelle is a director. But I'm going to toss the caber, as it were, excuse the pun, over to Hamish, first of all. Why are we here today, Hamish?
Well, for very good reason. We do like to celebrate the fact. In fact, earlier today, Michelle and I were attending a board meeting of IPSA, speaking about many things, including our Members' Day. And one of the things we actually trying to do is to assist our members to actually go out there and support, if you like, the conveyancers. And the conveyancers come from all sorts of different directions. I should add that Michelle and I have actually sort of worked here. It's got to be the best part of 20 years. We haven't measured it exactly, but we've known each other for that sort of period of time. And over that sort of period of time, of course, the whole conveyancing industry has changed in part. It's still a serious mess. They're still arguing about the same things they were arguing about 20 years ago. However, what we've been able to do because of technology and all the rest of it is bring in much more of that information together. So we can actually sort of help with the searches. Now, these are essential part of what goes on in conveyancing. Now, what Michelle is doing up there in Northeast has rather inspired me in my direction down here near in Oxfordshire to start moving in similar sort of directions. We need to engage with the public to let the public know about searches, what searches do for them. But we can also support so many people within the conveyancing process. And this is something that Michelle is expanding on and doing significant work with sort of groups up. So she speaks up she has these meetings that she holds up in Newcastle. She comes down and she speaks to people down in London as well.
Good Lord.
Out of it.
I'm surprised that those Northerners deigned to speak to us at all. Michelle, a very, very warm welcome to you. What is this searching nonsense all about?
Searching nonsense. Oh my goodness. Well, local authority searches and any conveyancing searches do get a bit of a bad reputation, I have to say, as being a little bit boring. And what do they mean? Do we have to have them? Do we have to pay for them? I talk to a lot of landlords and investors up here, and they see this £200 to £300 appearing on their solicitor's bill and go, "What? Well, why have I paid that?" And actually, Gareth, it's so important to get your searches done. And what I'd like to talk to people today about is just what searches are, what they mean, what they're for. And
I'm the chairman. I'm the chairman of all things ignoramus, and I'm here to learn, Michelle.
Well, very good. Thank you very much, Hamish, for the introduction as well. Obviously, we've known each other a long time. We are both very experienced in the search industry. We do things along the same lines because we're part of IPSA. We know how to do searches properly. We work very locally. We're specialists in our local area. And that shows when we carry out the searches. And local knowledge is very important when you do a local authority search because you're dealing with properties in that authority. And lots of things can affect it, the environment, the local area, not just about the planning on it, etc., etc. So what I'd like to do just now is just talk to you about the different types of searches that we have and a little bit about each one. Okay. Mostly people know about the local authority search, and it is obviously the one most people talk about. But there are, in essence, especially in the Northeast, we have a quartet of searches that most conveyancers would purchase from us. They'll take the local authority search, a regulated local authority search carried out by ourselves. They would do a coal mining report, which is mainly in the Northeast, but there's other pockets in the country, but it's not such a big big cellar down in Hamish's neck of the woods, because obviously there's no coal mine down there.
What's that, Hamish?
Northamptonshire, Corby.
I was going to say, except there are pockets like Nottingham, and there are places. I was going to say Bedford, so I'm glad you put me straight on that. There's the odd pocket down south, but on the whole, most properties in the northeast of England would have a coal mining report. Down south, they're few and far between in comparison. Most companies now would order an environmental report to know a little bit more about the environment, what your property is built on and its surrounding area. And then every property would have a water and drainage report, whether it's an official one from the Water Authority or a regulated one, which is supplied by the likes of Hamish and myself. So that's the 4 searches: your regulated local authority, your coal reports, your drainage, and your environment. So really the key reports. There are other little areas around the country where you'd get something like in Cornwall, they do tin mining searches. There's a few little odds and sods around the country, but not, the quartet is the most important, certainly up in the northeast.
Right, I'm going to ask stupid questions now, so please try not to look disdainful when I ask. And maybe a stretch, but we'll try. Why would I need to do a search? Surely I can just go to I don't know, the council and just say what's going on, give me a list, and that'll be it. Why do I need to employ someone to do all this sort of stuff?
Well, several reasons. You could wander up and do it yourself, but the lender's not going to accept it. So if you need a mortgage, your lender isn't going to accept what you put in front of him.
Because it's not independent. Is that the reason?
It's not independent. It's not regulated. It doesn't have the seal of approval by the regulatory bodies and the societies that the lenders want to see stamped on each of those searches. It's also not backed by insurance. So all of our searches, we've got professional indemnity. Ours is 5 million, and you have to have a minimum of 2 million. And then you also have to have the search warranty insurance for each search that backs up the information that you're providing. So you can't just rock up and just do that. You can. If you're buying it cash, you could do whatever you like. But
of course,
there's lots of cons to doing that as well.
So the purpose of the search, really, in general terms, if one could do an overall statement, the search is to find all the preventable risks. Is that
Well,
the sort of thing?
Reasons. Yeah, it's preventable risks, but it's also information that might affect your enjoyment of your property. So, for example, double yellow lines. Double yellow lines seem harmless, but if the council decide to put them outside of your property, and you're used to having all your family come round and park outside the house and come and visit you, and suddenly they can't, and they've got to go half a mile down the road, it spoils your enjoyment of your property. Or if they decide to put a bus stop outside of the property. Exactly. So when you get searches, you've been to see a property, you love the look of it. A search could tell you if the council in the next 6 months to a year are going to put double yellows or put a bus stop outside your property.
Well, so it goes. I mean, would it identify if, for instance, the neighbour next door had done a double height extension that might be overlooking you? Would it? No. So where does the limitations of these searches?
Within the boundary of the property that you're buying.
Right. Excellent. Would it also identify what that boundary was?
No, that's the land registry. But it will actually, there are certain elements of the search which will be up to 250 metres away that come into effect, sort of planning policies. And also if there's a road scheme, if they're going to build a bypass, they'll look at, is that within 250 metres of your property? So, that's the kind of thing that does extend outside the boundary, but there's only a few things that it includes that. Now, when you're looking at your environmental report, if you're looking at your core report, then that's slightly different. That's not just the boundary of your property.
So environmental report is all the rage at the moment, I would have thought. Everybody's keen to try and reduce their carbon footprint, etc., and know what their energy situation is. No. I told you I was an ignoramus. You're going to have to educate me again, Michelle.
It's based on the land that it's built on and the environment that affects your property within 250 meters. They go out in certain diameters. So there's certain, depending on things like they'll bring in wind farms within 10 kilometers, I think it is, so, and there's reasons for that. And then you've got floodplains. It's not just immediately outside of your property. Again, it's within a certain distance of the property, because obviously they have potential impact on the property. So there's lots of things, but it's not necessarily about being more energy efficient. It's more about how the environment affects your house, your property, and what can affect it from a distance as well. So wind farming, for example, there's noise on from the generators and the turbines, and so that can affect if you're close to them. So whilst you can't see it in your immediate vicinity, it can potentially affect your property. So little things like that. Hamish, you got any comment about environmentals?
Well, yeah, I'm very, very interesting. We've just had one sort of feedback, which was nearer your neck of the woods than ours. It's from Grimsby. And this particular sort of property came back, and it was pretty clean, temporarily. It's unfortunately on the East Coast. It's within 200 meters of the coastline. And there's not likely to be any impact over the next 25 to 30 years. Thereafter, they are saying there might be some concern with coastal erosion because there is no protection against, and because things like that are important. When you actually look at the extension now of mortgages and how far mortgages are going out, and it was, as Michelle was saying, we try and create a picture there. And I think you actually mentioned this, Gareth. You are learning.
Yes, sir.
Risk. What we are trying to do is provide sufficient information for that solicitor to identify any risk, any potential on behalf of their client that they need to be looking out for. And indeed, things like the coal mine. One of the great things about coal mining, of course, it's sort of pretty well done. They aren't likely to build many coal mines any longer. So at least that, but the trouble is with all the other information, it's moving all the time. Things are changing. As we said, coastal erosion so there's a lot that's actually sort of impacted there. And of course, the drainage and water sort of situation as well, because there's a variety of things that can happen. And so there's lots of information as I sort of try to put, it's almost putting 4 dimensions there. We're putting a little wrap around there to say, hey, look, mister, your castle is protected. And that's really shows it.
It's been my impression that searching and what perhaps what IPSA is all about is fairly well misunderstood by general public. I think they see it almost like a hindrance rather than a...
Yeah, they do. They think that it's down to the cost. Why am I paying for this? When the solicitor turns around and says your terraced house is fine, there's not likely to be any flooding. It's on a hill in a town centre or close to a town centre, and there's nothing going to affect it. There's no coal mining affecting it, and everything's negative. They just go, "What have I paid that for?" Well, because you found out your house is a castle, your castle, and it's going to remain your castle, and it's not going to be knocked down. It's not going to fall over. It's not going to be flooded. There's all of those things that they've paid for peace of mind. But they just go, "Oh, why have we paid for it?" That's what you want to hear, that there's nothing affecting your property at all. So
well, I think almost, I mean, this is just me suggesting, if it could be presented almost like, like you go to a quick fitter and they have a checklist of everything on your car. This could be, we are the ones that perform the checklist to make sure that your house doesn't end up with a flat tire. That's probably not a good analogy, but you understand.
Yeah,
it is effective. It is the ultimate checklist, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Can I just add a little rider in here, though? Of course,
please do.
It is. There are people who are suggesting that that's all conveyancing ought to be, a checklist. Now that wouldn't be so bad. If you get sort of 4 houses and sort of block, and you've got sort of 4 flats sort of stuck there together, those 4 flats differ. They might be certainly presented in a similar sort of way. However, they both have a different boundary. They have a different outside wall. They've had different electrical sort of fittings changed here, there, and all the rest of it. The gas fittings have changed over, and they might have had an extension on the ground floor. They wouldn't on the first floor. Well, one assumes not. However, trying to create those 4 places are not identical. They've got different sharings going on with parts of in the land, in the ground, and so you cannot have, let's just sort of tick the boxes. You need some of this. That human approach is essential, and Michelle spoke about it earlier. You understand this anyway, Gareth. If we get somebody who has the local knowledge, who's actually looking into it, they'll very often know the area anyway.
Well, this is an interesting thing. This kind of maps onto a shameless plug. On Thursdays at 10 o'clock, Hamish is involved with me in Property Quorum. And one of the many topics that keeps raising its ugly head again and again are the benefits of, dare I say it, shopping local. If you're using someone with local knowledge, specialized in your area, you're more likely to find the elements that could cause problems way before they do.
Absolutely. No, I just add the right before we go back to Michelle again. One of the great advantages of what we do in IPSA searches, and you highlighted this as well, Gareth. There is Michelle. She's based up in the northeast. She's working up there, out of sort of Newcastle and surrounding sort of areas. Here I am in Oxfordshire. What is the connect? Well, the thing is, if I have a solicitor comes to me and says, "Look, we have a property up in the northeast. We've got it in Newcastle," or like Grimsby was the one I spoke about. We have people within that organisation who work or have worked with those local councils for years and years and years, some of them for over 25 years. So we can always find somebody so they get in there quicker, get the right information, because so much information that's available from so many of the sources that Michelle was speaking about, particularly in terms of what we as individuals do, is unrefined data. Now, we don't want mountains of paperwork going through to a solicitor to check stuff out, which is totally irrelevant. So we refine that, and the local person will refine it using their local knowledge to actually sort of do that.
So Michelle, in this golden age of information technology, surely it's just a couple of clicks and you've got all the information at your fingertips, right?
No.
I know how to make Michelle laugh, you see.
Yeah, we touched on this last time, didn't we, Gareth, where you basically said the same thing, and I was like, no, you have no idea. Most of the councils are different. They well,
that
no,
would be me. That would be me.
Yeah, it was you. Every council is different. Everyone has their own way of storing the data. Most of it's online in one shape or form, but doesn't mean to say it's accessible. Certainly in some authorities it's not easily accessible, so whilst it's on the website, you've got to try and find it, and then there's lots of places still where it isn't available online, and that is a huge problem for people, depending on where you live, as to how easily you can access the data. And that's why you come to a company like ourselves, and Search and Convey, is to find the information relevant, because you cannot go and do it yourself. Even the council struggle to find their own information at times.
So that £200 is actually to find someone with the bloodhound instincts to dig through and find that information wherever it may lie. And it's quite different. It could be quite different located depending on which council you're talking to, whether it's up north with flat A's and pools of beer, or down south with soft southerners.
Exactly. It's very different, and I'll cite the example of Newcastle City Council. They have their files. They've now moved it on online only recently. Prior to that, you used to get a card. You filled in your property address on that card. They would then take your card, find another card with the references for your property. They'd then go to the filing cabinets. They'd then pull out those cards and bring them back to you. And you'd have to write down what was on those cards.
Oh, God, that's a lot of cards.
There was a lot of cards at times. And the problem was, during lockdown, they actually couldn't go into the offices. So they couldn't do searches in a timely manner. They had to wait until one person was allowed in, when that person was actually not ill or whatever, or not on holiday. And to this day, until very recently, that was the situation. But they were working from home part-time. So you had someone who still had to go into the office to get those documents for you, scan them in, and then email them to us.
So there is good news in the offing, I guess. Things are gradually moving to a more easily remotely searchable format. Is that right? Slowly.
Slowly. I mean, if you think it's 2024 and, you know, I've been in Newcastle now 21 years.
I did say slowly.
It's taken 23 years to do that. So, you know, there are, like I say, there are other areas where they've been online and they've perfected the system, that their information is up to date. And, you know, there are some really great councils. There are others where it's just difficult to work with them because they're very disparate in how they work. So building regs doesn't talk to land charges very much, and their system's different and it's hosted on a different server. And, you know, it is hard. But that's why we're here. That's why the whole industry has basically come about, is because you need someone who's prepared to do the digging, the diving, the detective work, and put it all together to be able to give the consumer the best report with all the information for their property. Because the other thing about it is the computer says yes in councils, but it really doesn't always say yes. It tells you a pack of lies at times, and you have to go and pick through it to find out the correct information, because the information is only as good as the inputter. And
Rubbish in, rubbish out. Hamish, bring us home.
Well, I think what came up, I'm sure it was our counterpart in Wales that was speaking to earlier today, because one of the pieces of information, probably in extreme cases, is more appropriate to developments. However, it could be important, and we won't go into it because it's quite a complicated subject at the moment, the extent of the highways. How far does that? You don't want to be responsible for the road outside of your house. So you want to know the extent of the adoption, the extent of how much is maintained by the council and how much, if any, you're responsible for. And he was actually sort of saying that some of that information he can get directly online. Other information can take a couple of days. He said, however, not all the records and information are on file, and it can take up to 3 months because an engineer has to go out, because they don't know. The engineer has to go out, do a load of research in the field, outside in the field, bring it back, then they discuss who is responsible for what before making a decision to let you know. And that's taken 3 months. And that's in some councils take even longer, but it does show the disparity of what actually sort of goes on, and which is why if you've got something which is being done on a consistent basis, you've got something like Michelle up there in the northeast. There's only 2 of us represented here, but we have all over the country, England and Wales. We do have people who can go in, decipher this information and simplify it for the solicitor at the end of the day. We want to help that solicitor speed things. If we get the information forward quickly, it's a much, much better idea.
So I guess the motto from today's get together is buy local, get local knowledge, but remember there is an organization of searchers out there called IPSA who, if in the event that you need to get information from different parts of the country, they can find someone to help you. Thank you once again, Hamish McLay, for taking your time out to help educate me, and Michelle Poller for setting me straight on so many different areas. I've been Gareth Wax of Many Purple Hats. We try and bring property matters to your attention, talking specifically about searches and how they can affect you and your property. Until next time, I wish you all a wonderful weekend and, of course, great mental health. Bye-bye.